I'd like to welcome you to our online presentation today with Natural Habitat Adventures. We're here to discover China's road less traveled. And we're here today with Brad Joseph. Brad is a naturalist interpreter specializing in bear biology and ecology of the North Country. He attended the University of Alaska Fairbanks, graduating with a BS in wildlife biology in 1999, and since then has worked as a biological research tech on various projects throughout Alaska. He has guided numerous professional photographers, photography workshops, bear viewers, and film crews on expeditions along the remote coast of Katmai National Park for the last 11 years, as well as in Churchill, Manitoba for the past 6 years. And in addition to being a bear junkie and wildlife photographer, Brad's hobbies include botany, gardening, bird watching, and volunteering with the Homer, Alaska Volunteer Fire Department as an EMT. Brad's love of wildlife has led him on numerous solo adventures throughout the world, including trips to Borneo, Central America, the Amazon, China, which is what we're here to talk about today, Africa, Sri Lanka, and India. And as an aside, I also want to say that we were just talking about Brad before we started today. He was just interviewed last week on CNN because some of his bear footage was picked up there as well. So Brad is certainly making a name for himself in the community, and we are just delighted to have you here with us today, Brad. Thanks for joining us. I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay. Hey, guys. Thank you. We were talking about how it's kind of scary to do a webinar because you can't see the audience, but this doesn't seem as scary because I did 3 Skype interviews with CNN where I couldn't see the audience, but that was national TV, so this isn't so bad. I do have a wasp flying around the room, but then when I was doing the CNN interview, I had a moose come through the yard right in the middle of it because I was doing it outside. So again, this is a little bit easier to deal with than that. All right, so anyway, yeah, I did a similar webinar about China last year, but that was before the trips had actually run. We had planned it out, I'd scouted the itinerary, we redesigned the trip. So I knew where we were going to go, and I'd been there, and I talked about how the trips were going to go. And both the trips filled up, and we did them, and they were awesome successes. So this will be a little bit of a repeat, but I've got new pictures and stories and stuff, so it's kind of like an update. So I'm going to run through the itinerary of this and talk about some of the highlights of this awesome trip, and also why I think this trip is really special and that I'm so excited about it. Of course, the Natural Habitat's been going to China for many years, probably 15 years, I think. I've been guiding the China trips for 5 years now, and spent a lot of time over there on my own, learning about the country and the wildlife and everything. So, and for sure, my trips and all the NatHab trips that I've guided and previous to that, the big draw has been the pandas. Pandas are about as charismatic as any animal in the world, and they're also, next to the black rhino, I think the World Wildlife Fund says they're the most endangered. So there's definitely an exotic, charismatic draw that people will draw people to zoos or breeding centers or panda habitat just to get close to this animal. And there's nowhere you can do it anywhere like you can in China, in Szechuan. You can see pandas better here, more of them, and it's just an incredible experience with the pandas. And of course, you can, in China, in some areas that we go to, you can actually do some pretty amazing things with some of the captive pandas that are at the breeding centers, like interact with them. So this is the major draw, and it's for bear lovers for sure. It's a must-do on the bucket list. For any wildlife lover, just to get close and learn about this, which is like a living fossil almost, one of the most exotic animals on Earth, is an awesome experience, and that's the major draw. But we've done a few things to diversify this trip and do other stuff, things that we didn't do in the past and that other programs don't do, other tours don't do. And one of them is actually try to get out and explore wild panda habitat. So it's difficult to get to and to find anywhere where wild pandas live that you don't pretty much need a helicopter to get to. but there are a few secret little places that through a lot of search and trial and error that I was able to find and plan a really cool itinerary that has so far been very, very successful and an awesome adventure. So that's one of the things. And when we do get into these wild panda areas, we see some of the other species that share this wild panda habitat. And I call them the major three, like, you know, Africa's got its big five. Well, I think in Szechuan, I just kind of made this up, but you've got the golden three, which are the three awesome animals to see when you're in wild panda habitat. And this one is the, and we saw all three on these last two trips. The Szechuan golden snub-nosed monkey, which is one of the rarest primates on Earth, and I think as beautiful as any. And I'll talk about him more later. And then there's the golden takin. Talk about that later also as well. We had the golden monkey and then the golden takin on the second trip. Both were some of my wildlife viewing highlights in my life, which I think says a lot, since I've devoted my life to studying and viewing wildlife and seen a lot of wildlife in my life. So to make up into the top 10 of wildlife experiences for me, and even like top 5, it's a pretty big deal. And each one of the trips had its own highlight for me. And then there's the other beautiful golden pheasant, which is a very rare game bird, pheasant of the mountains of China, that we saw actually numerous wild golden pheasants, and we're able to photograph them. All these pictures are my pictures. Some of them are from the past, but most of them are from these last two trips. In our search for these secret slices of wilderness that China has, you know, we have to get into some of what the most beautiful country in China. This isn't the China that most people think of. When you think of China, you think of things you see on the news media, CNN or Newsweek or whatever you read about places, and this isn't really the China that people think of, but it's there. And it's beautiful, and that's the China that I want to go to on our trips. This vast, you know, beautiful, untouched, some of these untouched wilderness areas, the most pristine areas. You know, and some of them, you know, do get a lot of traffic from Chinese tourists, but almost no international tourists. So you kind of feel like you're seeing something that's sort of secret to the rest of the world, similar to like a Yosemite or Yellowstone. You know, China's got its own places like this that are very, very beautiful. So again, this isn't the China that most people think of, or that you know, very many tours go to when traditional Chinese travel. Like you go to the Great Wall and Shanghai and different places. You don't get out into the rural areas and really get a feel and immerse yourself in what is in the China that I actually love. And get out into this frontier of culture, this like vast array of ethnic minorities that still hold exotic traditions that, you know, have evolved over thousands of years, have had, you know, little Western influence, and they still have their own dialects, their own kinds of dress, different kinds of food, things. I mean, so there's just so much diversity here. There's so much to see. It's hard for me to put an hour presentation on this trip because there's about 30 things I'd like to talk about for more than 20 minutes. So it's really hard. That's the hardest thing about doing this for me. And then you know, as I want to surprise people of a China that they don't expect, it's to get out and see the people of China, which are not, as people might think, you know, oppressed and miserable and things. They're happy. They're coming into their golden age. China is rapidly progressing into its golden age. And it is a very fulfilling experience to be in that situation where you're actually meeting people that are so enthralled with new freedoms and new improvements of quality of life, but also still having some of these very cool old traditions like the medicines and the foods. They're happy, they're generous, they're humble. They're my favorite people in the world, really. When you get out into rural China, you will meet my favorite people, the ones that I want to be around. Every day I'm in China, I love it even more. These are all parts of the trip. Okay. One thing that people do think about China is they know that environmental issues and endangered species, it's a big deal over there. But what I think it's important is for us not to stereotype the whole country into some mistakes that have been made in the past, some very bad ones, even being made in the present, and by some people. There are amazing conservation stories and successes in China. And there's people over there that love the wildlife as much as we love our wildlife back home. And they do just as good and some much better at preserving things, saving endangered species, conserving habitat. All of China is not, I wouldn't say bad for that stuff. There's some very, very good people, very, very good things going on. And in my view, I've had people tell me I'm not going to China. I'm not going to go on a trip to China because of things about the ivory trade or whatever, different black market medicinal things and endangered species uses that are wrong. And those are terrible, but it's unfair to the people that are doing tremendous conservation work and do love and appreciate those wildlife. I think it's unfair to ignore them. It's very worthwhile to go and help them appreciate what they have and what they've done and support them. That's the main thing. So yeah, you can see this is why pandas are so endangered. The pandas used to inhabit much of China, but they're just isolated in these tiny little places. But 20 years ago there was only about 13 reserves, and now there's 40. So there's the saving of the giant panda from extinction, which was very, very likely in the late 80s. It's one of the greatest conservation stories in history. And what I want to do on this trip, and I believe we've done it, is I would like to honestly say that a person going on this trip this is about the best donation. This is the best donation you could give to panda conservation, is to go on this trip for a lot of reasons. And I'll talk about this more later, but you're doing good when you go on this trip because there's a lot of people over there that can use support and appreciation, such as the local residents that we hire to help us find wildlife or help us carry things or support. When we come there looking for these wild animals and appreciating them, they get a benefit, and that puts a value on the wildlife, puts a value on the reserves, puts a value on that wise use of the resources. And you put a value on it in today's world. That's how you save things in one way. Going out into the areas adjacent, into the borderlands where sort of the fringes of wilderness and farmland, and seeking out the people that are doing things to sustainably live there to coexist with the wildlife and do it sustainably. Seeking those people out, learning about how they're doing it, what they're doing, and telling them thank you, like I appreciate that. And and coming from being these foreigners coming from the United States and never even seen foreigners before, it makes a big impact when you walk through these villages. Going to a local school outside of the panda reserves and donating natural history books and animal books, and having these kids meet Americans or the foreigners for the first time in their life and say, we came here because your backyard is valuable. You have wild animals that deserve to be protected, and you're very lucky, and we really we encourage you guys to value them and maybe conserve them as you get older. And that's planting seeds that you really can't even put a value on. But that's all stuff that happens on this trip, and that's why I'm proud of it and hope it grows. So speaking of this kind of thing, I think this really relates to the World Wildlife Fund, who's partners with Natural Habitat. Speaking which, I think Ben Bressler told us the other day that he totaled up the number that World Wildlife Fund has been, Natural Habitat has donated over the years in history a total of $1.4 million to World Wildlife Fund to help them, in different ways. And I think this year it's 307,000 are going to be donated by June 30th. So, so your money, but what happens? Where does that money go? To World Wildlife Fund, and what do they do? There's lots and lots of, well, in China, I think is probably their textbook example of what their success was, and it happened in the 80s. And it's been said that the Chinese government and the World Wildlife Fund got together, and together they saved the giant panda from extinction. And that's still going on today. It's improving habitat, conserving habitat, developing corridors so that the two habitats are connected so you can maintain genetic diversity, making sure that these protected areas and animals are patrolled, making sure they're managed properly, and making sure there's research done so that these animals can be monitored and we know what they need to have to survive. Also, World Wildlife Fund, one of its major goals is to develop responsible ecotourism. And so some of these areas that we're going to on this trip can use that in a big way, but haven't gotten it yet. So this is really kind of, to me, it's one of the places in the world where I can be involved in cutting edge stuff, developing responsible ecotourism. How to view wildlife, appreciate it, bring financial resources to the animals and the surrounding areas, without having a negative impact. And so I'm going to go through the itinerary now, and we start out in Beijing. You guys can see Beijing up there, and that's where the trip starts. That's where you will meet me, and then also a local guide who will help me. There's a couple local guides that I work with over there, and they're all fantastic. I mean, they have great English. They love sharing China with travelers. They're professionals. They're dedicated. They've trained, and Abraham is one, and he's just been excellent over the years working with me. And so we spend a couple of days in Beijing because that's where you got to go, and it's a beautiful city that's worth a look. Beijing is an awesome city. It's one of the most powerful cities in the world now. So I think that for anybody that's updated with current events, you want to see Beijing and see what's there, and it's impressive. There's been people there for 250,000 years. Well, that's when I guess people, but it's a Peking man in some of the caves. His fossils were found in the caves around Beijing. The city's dated back 3,000 years, and it's also been a political hub for China for 700. So you have an intense history there in Beijing, and such as like the center of the city here, Tiananmen Square. There's a very, very colorful history there, and right behind it there is the gates to the Forbidden City, which was home to the emperors. Surrounding that is sort of concentric lines, and some of these old 500-year-old neighborhoods still exist, and they haven't been demolished for high rises and stuff. And that's only because these residents, these Chinese people, are so in touch with their traditions and history that they actually want to live in these small kind of neighborhoods just like their ancestors did. And that's powerful and special to me. So we're wandering through these places and looking for the real China and the old stuff, markets, and how this Chinese food is prepared. It's with the ingredients that we've never even heard of. Asian markets are amazing. Festive nightlife, awesome food. These are all parts of Beijing that we enjoy and are able to photograph and learn about with the help of our local guide. And about 2 hours away from Beijing there's a couple places you can see the Great Wall, but this one is the one we go to, which is up in the mountains, and it's visited much less, and it's beautiful. It's very scenic in the mountains here. So the Great Wall is something that you got to see in your life. It's the whole thing spans 5,500 miles. It's made up of natural barriers, of rammed earth, of brick, stone, some wood. And it's just, you can't believe that humans actually did this back in those days. Did this to protect the, in southern China from Mongolian tribes and some pretty violent guys that would come over. So it's the Great Wall. It's the first part was built 1,400 years ago. Of course, you look at it, that's what you're seeing there is not 1,400 years old. It's, some of it's been rebuilt and refurnished and stuff like that, or renovated. And then after Beijing, we spend 2 days there, but then we fly down to what you see highlighted in red, which is this province of Szechuan. So Szechuan is a big place, and it's very diverse. And it's got what is my favorite areas of mountains, of culture, and of course that's where the best wildlife is. And so that's where we spend most of our time, most of the trip. It's based out of Chengdu, and then we take side trips into the mountains. So it's overland, and the Chengdu is down in the Szechuan Basin, and then there are these beautiful mountains, and then beyond that first ring of mountains, where's my little mouse there? Right here, all this is the Tibetan Plateau. So you've got such a diversity of ecosystems, of cultures, of landscapes in this one province. In Szechuan, you will meet my co-guide, Philip. He was a very good friend of mine. I've known him for many years and done a lot of things with him, even a lot of personal exploration into the mountains of Szechuan and the Tibetan regions, looking for wildlife, looking for birds, photographing. We've scouted this trip out together. We've planned it together. We've guided it together, and we just get along great, and he's awesome. He's very rare in China as being as good and professional as any guide in the country, but also very strong appreciation for natural history and birds, photography, and so he's just the perfect match. And he also is an incredibly hard worker. He's been working for, about, I think, 14 years. He taught himself English. He's a Tibetan, and grew up in the mountains in a tiny village of, I think, less than 100. He's a Kiang Tibetan. So again, not only is he a bird expert, and very knowledgeable of the wildlife and the culture, but also, he's an expert on the Buddhist culture that we see in the Tibetan culture when we go up into the mountain areas. And then we have an assistant guide there in Szechuan, since we spend so much time there, and her name is Vivian, and she's just, I guess, one of the comments from the past travelers is she's a ray of sunshine. Philip and I are pretty intense, when we get into guiding, and so she kind of offsets it. She's lighthearted and just a wonderful person. So excited, just starting her career as a guide, and just a great asset to our team over there to make these trips awesome. First place we go in Szechuan is the Moon Bear Rescue Center. This was set up by Animals Asia, which is a Hong Kong-based foundation, nonprofit that is set for animal welfare and also conservation. And there's a woman named Jill Robinson who founded it, and she started this basically a sanctuary for moon bears that were taken from bear farms. So what a bear farm is where it's a very unethical practice, very, very cruel. They milk bile from the bear's gallbladders for Chinese medicine. And it's terrible. I shouldn't even talk about it too much. It's very disturbing. But some of these farms are being closed because they're too unethical, but the government closes them down. So where do these bears go that have been treated so poorly? And so this is kind of basically veterinarians fix any health problems, and these bears can live out their life in a wonderful place and enjoy their years being treated well by people for the first time. And it's brought tears to many people's eyes to come see these bears, especially when they walk up to us and check us out and sniff us and look at us in a general, in almost an affectionate way. Like, I mean, if I was one of those bears, I would hate people, and I would never forgive them. But these guys have forgiven people. And every time we go, some of these bears will come up and just check us out. And you look into their eyes and you think about what's happened to them, and you just can see they're happy now, and it just makes you feel really good. And so again, we're on this trip. We're going out and seeking out some of the wonderful aspects of Chinese conservation and animal welfare, and we're saying we appreciate that, we support it, and of course we donate when we're there, and then learn about the bears. And these bears are something that we will learn more about and look for when we get up into the nature reserves to the north. These Asiatic black bears are moon bears. There's only about 25,000 of these moon bears left in the wild. There's also a Tibetan brown bear there that was rescued. Two of them, actually, a brother and a sister that were rescued by a Buddhist monk on the Tibetan plateau. So this is a grizzly, basically. It's a brown bear. It's got different kind of fur. It lives very, very high elevations. Very rare, and it's always you'll see this beautiful, two beautiful brown bears that were rescued from a market and now live a very nice life together. And they're very, spacious, very, very clean, good enclosures where they have all kinds of puzzles for them to be stimulated and stuff. Okay, so Chengdu is basically our base city. That's where we fly into, and we have to spend several nights there as we go on our side trips to the north and to the south in Szechuan. Chengdu it's a big city. It's I think 14 million, but it's got a different feel to it that I really, really like. It's built on the banks of the Xinjiang River, which is also called the Brocade River, or the other name for it. And it's been there for 23,000 years. It was the center for a brocade industry, and it was back then. It was said that when you washed the brocade in the river, it became brighter. It's just got a very laid-back lifestyle. It's kind of semi-tropical. It's famous for its food, for sure. Szechuan's famous for its food. All the special spices and ingredients. It's very fertile. The Szechuan Basin is very fertile. So vegetables, greens, things that we've never heard of. Yeah, it's awesome food, the Szechuan food. And also just famous for different cultural things like the face-changing show. This is a kind of opera that we go see one night. It's a mixture of opera and like acrobat and comedy and puppet show, and very, very cool. And Chengdu is also famous for pandas. It is the home to the giant panda, the Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding. And this is a place where you can see pandas in numbers and doing things you can't see anywhere else. And I've had my best panda photography experiences here for sure. This base was started in 1987, and there were 6 giant pandas rescued from the wild. This is when they almost went extinct. And from that 6, they've been bred, traditional breeding and also insemination. Now there's 83 there. There's been 124 panda cubs born, so very, very successful. And the enclosures are beautiful, lush grounds. There's tons of pandas and panda cubs, babies, mothers with babies, subadults that play together, siblings. They climb trees. And this is where I did take a picture that made on the current catalog. There'll be a new catalog out here soon, but I took this picture a few years ago. And it's the same picture, just got reversed. So here's a couple scenes from Giant Panda Breeding Center here. Pandas love to climb trees. They don't look like they'd be that good of a climber, but they never fall. These little cubs climb up in these branches, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this cub can't make it up there, and they'll be swinging from one arm by accident and climb back up. But they're very arboreal, meaning tree-loving, and I think it's because they feel very safe up there, because where pandas evolved, they evolved with lots of large predators, bigger and stronger than they were. And going up a tree was definitely the best way to be safe from tigers and wild dogs and brown bears and other things that might hurt a panda. Yeah, these are definitely happy pandas here. Pandas really are, I think they've kind of like evolved themselves into a very difficult niche, and I can't explain why. A panda will eat anything it can get. It will eat eggs or meat or anything, but it basically has evolved to be a bamboo specialist, and I guess because it could, and that was a niche that it filled through evolution. And it's very hard because it doesn't have the stomach of an herbivore that can ferment the plant material and sugars into usable calories. It's kind of like our stomach. So if we were to eat what a cow eats, we would starve to death. But pandas are able to eat this bamboo, not digest it very well, but they just eat tons of it. And for them to be able to eat tons of it, they've evolved some pretty neat things, such as this pseudo thumb, which looks almost like, it's not an opposable thumb, it's just an extension of the wrist bone with a little pad on it, which is they're able to grip a bamboo stalk and eat it very easily when other bears could never do that. So very, very unique animals. They're very strong jaws. They have kind of a sedentary lifestyle to conserve calories. But they're tough animals, and they needed to be, because out in the wilderness where they live and have lived, there's some other tough animals out there. I think tigers don't really live with pandas anymore because tigers have been persecuted and hunted even more than pandas, but they had to evolve with them. And so you look at those big black circles on the eyes and then those big black circles on the ears. It's almost like accentuating eyes to make them look more intimidating. And those ears in the back, when that panda's laying back feeding on bamboo, and you're a tiger, you could sneak up on them pretty easy because they always kind of sit there on their hindquarters and eat, and they're only looking one way. Well, a tiger could probably easily jump and kill that panda from behind, but they'll never attack a panda, an animal that tough, if it's facing them. And so I think those two black ears almost look like two eyes, so it doesn't matter which way you snuck up on a panda, it kind of looked like it was staring at you. So I think that was, that's just kind of one theory of this unique coloration of black and white. The Chengdu panda base also has red pandas, which are kind of a distant relative of pandas, but they're different from pandas. They're in their own genus, and their own family actually, Aluridae, and but they also eat bamboo, and they also have pseudo thumbs to help them grip bamboo, and they also live in the same types of habitat. So that's the first interactions with pandas, and then the second one we go to is in the southern part of the basin. We would go down into here, and that's where we go to a place that was set up to help facilitate some of the pandas that were lost, or panda base that was lost in the 2008 earthquake in Wulong. So a lot of these pandas were relocated to a place called Bifingsha, which had already been built, luckily, because they realized that they needed several panda bases, research places, sanctuaries, so that if maybe a disease broke out or there was an earthquake in one or some disaster, you'd still have other pandas, and so you wouldn't lose everything. Because these are like 350 pandas captive in China. There's still not, there's not a lot. So we really have to be careful making sure that you keep that genetic diversity and stuff. So this is where the pandas are bred. And that was really how they got saved from extinction, was getting bred in these breeding centers. But now the next step is approaching, which is starting to release pandas back into the wild. Now this is a very difficult thing, and it's just in the last couple of years is just beginning. It's kind of a long story. It's something that we talk a lot about and learn about on the trip. That is something that the Chinese government, World Wildlife Fund, and these breeding centers are doing, is taking some of these captive pandas, teaching them how to be a wild panda, and then taking them into areas that have lost their pandas, or areas that China's taken massive areas and rebuilt panda habitat, and they're ready for pandas. China's spent billions of dollars in conservation for pandas. I mean, some of it was for other things, like stopping logging. That was good for pandas, also good for erosion and stuff. But also, the grain to green, when they started planting trees in the countryside to make up for the deforestation that happened during the Cultural Revolution. So there's been some serious efforts that the Chinese have done to save these species, and I think that it's amazing. So this is a place where people can actually interact with the pandas, which is pretty amazing. Of course, these pandas will never be released in the wild, but these are the ones. These are the ones that are going to be the breeders. These are cubs, and that's a very special experience. And I don't want to skip through it too fast, but I realize I've done what I always do, and I've started to run out of time. I got some other stuff I need to cover, but yeah, this is pretty awesome. Actually, this panda kissed Irene. She loved that panda so much the panda could feel it, climbed in her lap, and gave her a kiss, and that was pretty amazing. There's a lot of tear-jerking moments here. Yeah, to be able to sit and touch a bear like that is just awesome. It's just awesome. I love it. And just to see people light up, and it's all usually about 1,000 times better than I think it's going to be. You know, and as soon as you build up a little bit of appreciation for how rare and special pandas are, then you can see them, and then all of a sudden, there you are, and you can touch one and feel it. You know the history, the background stuff that we talk about. It's an awesome experience. So then we travel up into this region, these mountains up in here, in the Gansu border, where there's a whole bunch of linked nature reserves that were set up as early as the 60s and some of them in the 70s to preserve wild pandas and other animals that live with them. And to go to my favorite, which is right on the Gansu border, and it's relatively undiscovered, unknown. You know, on holidays, Chinese people will go visit in relatively small numbers, but the rest of the time there's basically nobody there. I mean, nobody, and very few foreigners have ever been there. In fact, we were the first, in this last April, we were the first foreigners group like ours to ever go in history, to go there to see wildlife. So that's amazing. We're breaking some new ground and seeing stuff that nobody else has seen. And of course, we will see animals that nobody gets to see. And just a beautiful setting that reminds me of Pisgah National Park or somewhere in the Smoky Mountains. Rivers and just very lush, it's subtropical forest. But because of the earthquake, Szechuan got a lot of stimulus money. So there was some decent infrastructure, some good stuff that got built, boardwalks and things. So it's not the trekking, the hard, grueling, dangerous stuff to get into these kind of habitats that it is in other areas that I've done that I can't take groups to because it's too dangerous and tough. This one is the exception, where we can see a lot of really cool wildlife, and we did. Even on boardwalks and roads is where we do most of our stuff. But we get special permits to go into areas that are actually closed to the public. You know, that's a long story how we got that done. But it's about going there and then showing we're not average tourists. We're different. We are, you know, responsible ecotourists, I guess you could say. And we're there to appreciate, not disturb, and put value on these animals. And so we get permission to do things that other people don't, which I think is really special. So we can also go into some areas that are very inhabited densely by wild pandas, some of the most productive wild panda habitat in China, areas where George Schaller did his research in the 80s. Now, I have to say that, you know, we did not see a wild panda. We saw the tracks or the scat and things like that. They're an elusive animal, and it's thick country. And while I don't think that they're that afraid of people, you know, I don't think we're chasing them out or anything like that. I don't think they're very difficult to see. And they're usually in a bamboo thicket or they're up in a tree. And while it's as dense as any panda population anywhere, it's still, there's not that many of them because it takes a lot of bamboo country to support a panda. But we do go to areas where pandas have been very recently. And I think that as we keep going back, eventually we're going to see, you know, a wild panda. And if that's my view of it. We may or may not, on a given trip, see a wild panda. I would never want anybody to be disappointed if we didn't because the chances are very low. But it's pretty awesome and magical to be in a place where there are pandas and see the bamboo they've eaten and see the scat and just have the chance to look for them and have the possibility of actually seeing one. And people have seen them back there for sure. And again, this is an area that people generally, I mean, tourists don't go. You have to have special permission to get back in here. So it's an awesome experience. Really, really. So this is a panda researcher collecting scat for genetic data. There I am holding up. To me, that's as cool as a wildlife experience. It's a fresh panda scat from like the week before or something. So I mean, it's pretty amazing for me to just be in a place where a panda was sitting, a wild panda. And then this is where we see our golden three. So the golden pheasants, just beautiful, iridescent, awesome game bird. A lot of other bird life too, like the Chinese blood grouse or blood pheasant. I mean, this park is rated grade 1 for biodiversity by the World Wildlife Fund. It is incredible diversity of plants, 2,400 species of plants, 400 species of mammals, an amazing, I can't remember the number of reptiles and amphibians, but it's very, very diverse, such as this red-spotted pit viper that we saw, which is actually one of the 8 most poisonous snakes in China. Also a very beautiful one. He was basking on a bridge. The black sorrel. There's 3 different species of primates that live here. The rhesus macaque, which is a little bit shy, and then the much more endangered, difficult to see, but much more common in this park, the Tibetan macaque, which is awesome animal. A huge personality to these Tibetan macaques, and awesome to photograph these guys, and they're really not afraid of people. And yeah, very huge expressions on their faces. And Tibet macaques, like baboons, have some pretty intimidating teeth. But you know, I think to me, some of these big males, they kind of look like the old man of the mountains. You know, really dense, shaggy fur because they live at high altitudes and they can deal in some very, very cold temperatures. This area does get cold and snowy in the winter. So there's something about primates. This is a tufted deer. We saw numerous tufted deer on our evening and morning walks on these nature trails. And tufted deer and the muntjac and the musk deer, all deer that we've seen there, are very unique because they've got these canine teeth. They don't use them for eating. The males use them for fighting over females, apparently. But yeah, very exotic kind of deer with not only small horns but also these big canine teeth, but they're not predators. Then there's a lot of different kinds of habitat here, such as these high cliffs where we use spotting scopes and we can look up and see blue sheep, which is the famous sheep that's the favorite food of the snow leopard. And then my personal favorite here is the takin. It's just a burly, muscular animal. It's like a mountain goat or a muskox that just, but much more muscular and stocky. Kind of an intimidating animal, really. Very sure-footed. These big males can be up to 800 pounds. And you just look at the shoulders and neck on that thing, and it's just awesome. And also check out the golden fur. There's there's 4 different subspecies of takin, and one is in Bhutan, and it's the national animal in Bhutan. So if you go on a trip to Bhutan, you'll see them. This is a different subspecies. Actually, this is a mixture of 2 of the subspecies: the Szechuan takin and the Shanxi golden takin. Since we're kind of on the border of Gansu, we have both, and so there's kind of a mixture. They hybridize, but you will see these guys with that beautiful golden fur. We were taking a hike one night. This was one of the wildlife experiences highlights of my life. I'd seen many takins. Of course, not until I came to this park had I ever really seen any. But this place is actually famous for takins, and you will see a lot. A lot of them are from a distance, or just briefly across a river. It's stuff you can photograph for sure. Really good photography opportunities for these awesome, unique animals. But I wasn't really ever expecting anything like this. We came around the corner, and there was a herd of 40 of them, and they had calves, and they started crossing this river. And then we realized that they were everywhere, and these calves started coming out of nowhere. And some of them walked up to us. We had to back up. These calves had no fear of us, and they just came up to us and were just checking us out. And of course, we didn't know what the mothers were going to think of when they found that out. So we actually had to back up. So I mean, it was an adventure. We were on foot, and it was very exciting, and we got some incredible pictures of these takin calves. So this reserve treated us very, very well. It gave us a place where we could get out and take walks and not see another person know that we were walking where no tourists had walked before. Set a good example to the park staff, which just loved us, who treated us like royalty. Of this is a different group of tourists. We want to appreciate the wildlife. We want to learn about the wildlife. We don't want to disturb the wildlife. We want to maybe photograph some of this rare types of wildlife. And we racked up some very long mammal lists of stuff that I never thought I'd ever see. The yellow-throated martin, the masked palm civet, the sorrel, the animals that I just mentioned. And we went out on night drives, night hikes, and it's just awesome. I mean, I could spend a month there. Just so lucky that we found this place, and really at this point we have it to ourselves. So it was awesome. It really was awesome. It was the highlighted trip for me for sure. It's one of my favorite places in the world is this place. It's just this rare chunk of Chinese wilderness that's got these animals, and I'm going to do my best to help them preserve it the right way. Every time we go, we always meet with the director and we give them tips and suggestions on how to properly manage this place so that more people can come put a value on these animals, but also maintain the integrity of the habitat and the well-being of the animals coming first. So that's stuff that I just love to be involved in. So then we go on this road trip up into the north up onto the Tibetan Plateau. We pass through these beautiful villages that never see Western tourists. Some of these are Gansu Muslim villages. Oh, here's a cool story. So I was walking through this place 2 years ago, scouting it, and these guys had never seen a non-Chinese person before. And this little kid was just looking at me like, "What is that?" I took a picture of him, and his grandfather loved it. And then the next year I came back, I was walking down the street and I saw him again. So he looks like he's grown up happy and healthy, and they're just tickled to see us, and we're just coming to appreciate their beautiful place. And then we go visit the school, and I have to say this was a very emotional experience for me. We asked these kids, they don't ever get there's zero curriculum for biology or natural resources. And so what we do is we go and tell them, and they've never seen Western tourists, they've never seen Westerners before, so they ask us questions about America, and then we ask them questions. We donate animal books, and we tell them why we're there. This is Vivian. She was translating for the kids and just lit up. They loved her. Oh, she just was such a little superstar. And opening the mammal books up and showing these kids, like, these are the bears that live in the mountains that like, we love these animals, and we've come all the way across the world just to see where these animals live. And then telling these people, we give them a speech. Your backyard is so valuable that if you take an interest in this place, in this area, and you have great job opportunities in the future as a biologist or a conservationist or whatever, and you're lucky, and it's very important to keep respecting these animals and preserving them and preserving the habitats. And hopefully we had to have planted a seed. These guys were just ecstatic. Well, they don't look that ecstatic there because they're very studious. So when we're talking, they're very disciplined students. But then when you get them lightened up and say it's okay, you can laugh and relax, and they're just so excited. Then we go to the farmland that's right on the border of the habitat, and we visit this farmer named Zoe, who I've known for 3 years now, and he's guided me on trips into the wilderness. And he does a little tour around where we look around at his farm. And then we go to where basically the World Wildlife Fund has set up these methane tanks. So instead of going out and having to cut wood for fires and cooking and warmth, the World Wildlife Fund and the Chinese government basically set up these tanks in households so they can use their pig waste and stuff, and then use it to compost, and then take the methane and make it for cooking fuel. So this is just awesome stuff. I'm going to kind of flip through these kind of quickly just to show you us going into these old traditional rural towns, getting experience of China that other people don't. Crossing the rhododendron pass on this wild highway across the mountains. Getting up into an area that's totally different, which is the Tibetan region, the Aba and Kiang Tibetan area. Again, different clothes, different food, different religion, some Buddhism, and Philip is great at explaining that stuff. And some of the best scenery in Asia, these high mountains. We go up into an area, Zhoujiago, a chain of lakes and waterfalls, which is amazing for landscape photography. I am going to just put it in the high gear here, just because I don't want you to miss any of these pictures, but I'm almost done. There's one last story I have to tell in pictures. Is that Zhoujiago is a pretty developed place. I mean, it's very pristine, but they've got developed walkways, and there's other tourists, but it's for landscape photography, it is phenomenal. And to see these rivers and lakes and forests, but it's kind of scarce for animals. Really good bird life, and then they've got these very rare naked carp which live in these lakes because there's a lot of calcium chloride in the water, and so they have like these no scales on these carp. So it's an endangered species, and we get to see them in their habitat among these beautiful mountains and forests. But this is another one of the wildlife highlights. We took a hike up into a reserve that had never before been visited by Western tourists, and we're definitely exploring. We went up there twice. We saw the monkeys once, not the other. It is a difficult hike. It's going to be an optional hike because it's 3 miles and you gain 1,000 feet in elevation, and it is on a trail. So it's we'll have optional activities for people that don't want to do this. But I did just, I'll explain that, later. But we did go and see the wild golden monkeys, and this was just amazing. These golden snub-nosed monkeys, they live at a colder temperature than any primate on Earth next to humans. And the amount of people that have seen these guys in the wild is very small. That's all I can say. And we watched them from kind of a distance, but through spotting scopes. But we were able to get some decent pictures and video of these guys jumping from treetop to treetop. So this was phenomenal as we traveled up to the Tibetan Plateau. And even snowed one day, and then finished our trip here in the beautiful Bridge restaurant in Chengdu for 2 amazingly successful trips. Okay, and the guys, I took too long, and I know there's a few questions, and so if Megan, if you'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I will go ahead and jump in here and ask you some questions. There was a question about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to flip through some random pictures while you ask that so you don't have to look at one picture the whole time.
Oh, perfect. That's great. The photos are incredible. I mean, gosh, I feel like I'm right there with you on the trip. Does the trip, there's a question here about whether the trip goes to the Three Gorges area.
No, it does not.
Okay. And then what is the highest altitude that you will travel up to?
Very, very briefly, cresting the rhododendron pass is 11,400 feet. And then once again, yeah, it's 11,000 is about, we crest 2 passes on roads, but we're only up there for a few minutes. So we're actually staying down about, when we're in Zhoujiago, we're between 6,000 and 8,000.
Okay.
But then the rest of the trip in the nature reserve and Chengdu and all that stuff, it's like 2,000 feet and less. So we don't really have problems with altitude, but it depends on how sensitive you are. We do feel it a little bit. We spend some time up at 6,000, 7,000, 8,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what is the activity level for this trip?
The activity level here is, I would say it's flexible, but I'm going to have to say it involves, you're going to have to be able to walk. I mean, any of the activities we need walking, like even the Forbidden City, it's a 2-mile walk, and so it's not really vehicle-based. Such as maybe the polar bear trip in Churchill is. So you are going to have enough mobility to walk over easy ground, but a couple of miles. And so it really depends on your definition of what's easy and moderate. But I think it's probably about close to maybe a moderate trip due to the long walks and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And can you refresh our memory? There was a question about how long these trips are.
Oh yeah. It's they're just over 2 weeks. The trip is it's a little bit longer than the previous trip, just by a couple of days. But I think so. Yeah. So it's a total. It's 13 days.
Okay. And Okay, please excuse me for probably not pronouncing this correctly, but hopefully I'll say it close enough that you'll understand what I'm asking you. There's a question here. If you go to an area called Bifengia,
Oh, yeah. Yes, we
how is
do.
that
So,
pronounced?
Bifingsha.
Bifingsha. See,
B,
God bless you. Bifingsha.
yeah, Bifingsha is the second place that we go to see the pandas. That's the place where we interact with the pandas and has a panda interaction, and also a lot more opportunities to photograph pandas and learn about them. That's Bifingsha. Yes, we go there.
Bifingsha. Great. And so that was the follow-up question. Was actually we had someone here who wondered how much interaction you get with the pandas. Boy, it sounds like you really get a lot.
Well, it's not a petting zoo. I mean, I always want to set expectations correctly. To go in and actually interact with these pandas is a pretty special experience, and you don't get a lot of time, and it's like just a few minutes, and it's an optional thing, so because the price fluctuates up and down because it's all regulated by the Chinese government, the amount, it is an extra expense. I always want just people to know that. But it's well worth it. But it's not like we spend basically all day playing with panda cubs. I can't have anybody expect that. But it's a rare special experience where you can go in just during the feeding time, and then be able to touch a panda, pet them, have one sit in your lap, get your picture with them, and just smell them and get to feel what it's like to be that close to a panda.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brad. Well, we've gone through all of the questions that we had. Megan's done an excellent job of answering some privately as well. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brad, for anything else you want to share before we go. And I just want to tell you how fortunate I feel to have been able to listen to this presentation today, and I have a feeling our audience feels the same. So I'll turn it back over to you now.
Okay, yeah, thanks, guys. I'm wondering how many people out there have heard both my webinars. I hope they were different enough. I tried to cover different stuff, and I hated to rush through that last part at the end, but I don't think it's just really hard for me to skip anything and leave anything out. But I do have a lot more information and pictures on these trips on my blog, which is alaskabearsandwolves.com. And if you go to categories, there's one on China. It has nothing to do with Alaska Bears and Wolves, but I still do it anyway. And I've written a whole bunch of articles and trip reports and pictures, and I have links to videos and of animals we've seen. So there's a lot to these trips that can't be covered in just an hour. But yeah, it's a very unique trip to China. China's a place I think everybody in the world should go to because it's up and coming, obviously, and it's going to be, when you go there, you realize how influential and successful they actually really are going to be in the future globally. And it's a happy place to be. It's not a sad place to be. The people are happy, and it's a pleasant place with amazing food, exotic, everything's exotic, and very exotic wildlife. And you just feel like, and on this trip, we go to areas where we really feel like an ambassador, where you can make a good impression, set good examples on how to appreciate a side of China that does not get as much attention as the negative parts of China. And there's a lot of reasons, if you by watching the news, why you wouldn't want to go to China, but we just go over there and we have a blast, and we see great things. And the earthquake problem or the bird flu problem or North Korea being close by, none of that stuff had any effect on our trips. And we just went, and we had it wasn't a tour, it was an expedition, it was an adventure. And it was, one of my career highlights was being able to be a part of this trip, help plan it, and then guide it. And I think it's going to be very successful in the future. So, yeah, I guess that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Brad. Fascinating as always. And for anyone who would like more information, of course, you can get that by either contacting your travel agent or going to the Natural Habitat Adventures website, and you'll see phone number there and so forth. So now it's time for us to close, and so we will say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.